Would you be surprised if I told you that you don't control your life, but I can tell you what does, and I can tell you how to use it? Hey, it's Steve Wershing, and thanks for joining me on 30-Minute Money. It's a popular time of year to be thinking about our plans for the next 12 months and how to better accomplish the things that we want to accomplish. But we all know what's said about New Year's resolutions, that for the most part, they don't work. In fact, in excess of 90% of people who make resolutions drop them before the first month of the year is out. Well, here's a quick money-making secret. Do what works. And so what we want to talk about is what actually works. But to do that, we have to talk a little bit about what actually determines where your life goes and who's in control. See, the difficulty is you don't control your life. Your habits control your life. It's those things that you do without thinking that more than anything else influences where you end up going. But the good news is you can control your habits. So what we want to talk about is how to pick up habits, because when you determine your habits, then your habits will determine your life. And so if you choose your habits well, you will get where you want to go. Now, as a financial advisor, many people would expect me to talk about goals. And of course, we do talk about goals, but goals won't get you where you want to go. Goals will not result in your success. It's the habits that will. Now, goals can be useful because they can help set direction and they can give you an idea of what kinds of habits you need to have to get where you want to go. But once you've determined that, really, it's much more productive to focus on the habits and not the goals. And so I'm going to talk about James Clear and the book Atomic Habits. Now, for those of you watching, I would normally hold up the book at this point, but the problem is I read it on Kindle and I don't have my Kindle here. So just take my word for it. I'm holding up a little book. We're going to talk about James Clear and Atomic Habits. And we want to focus on doing those little things that matter a lot. So one of the mistakes that people make with New Year's resolutions is they try to change something big. That's hard. It's really hard, especially if you want to do it over and over again. And some people don't really want to get too involved in doing the little things. But you know, the little things add up to a lot over time. In finance, we talk about compounding interest, and Einstein referred to it as, you know, the 12th wonder of the world is compound interest. And it's because little things accumulate over time to turn into really big things. If you put even $100,000 in the bank and it's making a little bit of interest and you look at it after the first day, you're not going to see very much. If you look at it after the first week, you're not going to see very much. But you know, if you leave it there and you let it generate interest and you let the interest generate interest for long enough, you get huge results. So what Clear suggests is strive for 1% per day. If you can make a 1% change every day, it's going to add up and mean something big in the long run. So you might think a year is about 365 days. If you make a 1% change, then 1% of 365, well, that means, you know, you should change your results by 3.65 times. What we find, however, is that changes multiply, they compound on top of each other. So if you actually made a 1% change every day, the result would be a 37.8 times difference. So even in a year, it adds way up. We don't want to focus too much on outcomes. We don't want to say, I want to save $10,000 or, you know, I want to be able to fully fund something, because those are outcomes. Those aren't what create the outcome, and it's the habit that creates the outcome. That's a lagging measure, and we want to take action on the thing that leads to it. So what are the behaviors that create those outcomes? Well, we want to figure out, you know, what is it that you want to do? Do you want to save more? Do you want to have better spending habits? You know, what is it that you want as the outcome? And then we need to figure out what habits lead to that, what habits contribute to that, and then we want to tweak those behaviors a little bit each day. Now, one of Clear's principles is that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you sink to the level of your systems. And so habits provide that kind of system, but even more important, we need systems around habits to make sure that we follow through on them and that we get some results. In fact, one of the things that he says is, if you care about the goal, you'll pay attention to the habits. In fact, I have that right over here. I'll show you here. So I apologize for you who are on the podcast because you won't be able to see this, but There it is. You can't really see it very well, but there it is hanging right off my bookshelf. That's what I face every day. And so if you care about the goal, then you will focus on the habit, focus on the system, excuse me. And you want to think about habits that determine who you are. Or you want to think about who you are in terms of the habits that you are. So we don't want to have a goal to read more. We want to be a reader. And if you have a habit of reading on a regular basis, then you will be a reader. One thing I've spoken about a couple times on this blog is that I'm a bicyclist. And so when I set out to have the goal of riding my first century and really becoming a bicyclist, I did that, but I didn't focus on necessarily how many miles I rode, or I didn't say to myself, I am bicycling. Every time I got on my bicycle, I said, well, look, I'm a bicyclist. And that helps me incorporate that into who I think I am. And whatever I can incorporate into who I think I am is something I'm more likely to do. Now, my goal at the beginning was to bicycle at least 3 times a week. But now, although I bicycle pretty frequently, even if I haven't bicycled for a week or a week and a half because I've been traveling or because something else got in the way, every time I get on that bike, I say, look, I'm a bicyclist. And by doing those little habits and incorporating it into yourself, it helps form that self-image. And once you have the self-image, it's actually really easy to follow through on. So what Clear says is that there are 4 steps to creating a good habit. You want to make it attractive. You want to make it obvious. You want to make it attractive. You want to make it easy, and you want to make it satisfying. If you can do those 4 things, then you've probably got a habit that you can stick with. And so let's talk about those one step at a time. The first thing is make it obvious. So that means, make it like the clear thing that you would do. So there are a couple of those things that I do that may be a good example. So whenever I'm traveling, for example, I always stick my phone in my back pocket. And so I have a habit that when I stand up and walk off an airplane or even get out of the car, I pat my butt, because if I feel it there, I know I have my phone. And I've had situations where I've left the phone in a pocket behind the seat in front of me, or, it's fallen out into my seat. If I stand up and pat my butt and it's there, I know I have it. And that's why that's a productive habit, but it's also easy because it's obvious. It's not hard to figure out where your phone is if you always put it in the same spot and you always have a way of knowing where that thing is. Another way is to do stacking of habits. So if you've already got a habit, attach a new one to it. One of the things that we'll probably mention again is that if you can do things first thing in the morning or early in the day, it's a little easier to follow through with because you have less of an opportunity to forget it. And so another habit that I worked on developing a few years ago was meditating every day. And I make sure that I do it every single day by doing it first thing in the morning. So, I get up, I get dressed, I come downstairs, I have a little lemon water with my vitamin C, and I sit down and meditate. And I always do it in that order. And that makes sure that I do it every single day by doing it first and attaching it to some things that I already did. The next thing is you want to make it attractive. So a few ways that you can do that. One is to attach a reward to it. So if you like to read the sports section every day, or if you like to check on the sports news, then say, every day before I check the sports news, I'm going to fill in the habit that you want to do. I'm going to look up my bank balance. I'm going to call a few customers, whatever it is. I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to read the sports page, or I'm going to look up ESPN.com. So give yourself a reward for doing that. Makes it more attractive, and that makes it easier to stick with. You also want to make sure that it's easy. That's the third step. So one of the things is to focus on the action and not the principle. Don't overthink it. Focus on the action. And what Clear says is it's practice over planning. So if you can do it easy, then it's easier to follow through on. And remember that the habit doesn't have to be the whole thing. So let's say that you want to exercise more. And so you would not necessarily make the goal initially to go to the gym for an hour 3 times a week. The goal might, or the habit might be to pick up your sneakers and put them by the door at night. If you make a habit of putting your sneakers by the door, every morning when you walk out, you're going to see them there, and it'll remind you, oh, I should pick those up and I'll go to the gym. The next step, of course, would be to say, Every day after lunch, I'm going to go to the gym and work out for a half an hour before I go back to work. But the first step can be really easy, and that's put the sneakers by the door, because when you get in that habit, putting habits on top of that, putting the sneakers on, going out for a run, will be a lot easier. One way that you can make things easy financially is to automate things. So if you want to save for retirement, you sign up for your 401k, because they'll pull it right out of your paycheck. If you want to accumulate a cash reserve, then you may open a savings account and program into your bank's website a transfer of a certain amount of money every week or every month into that account. You don't even have to think about it. So you get to sort of cheat a little bit. You get to develop a habit without actually having to do that much. But anything that you can do to make it easy. The other thing that you can do to make it easy is to use the 2-minute rule. Whatever you try to generate as a new habit should fit into 2 minutes. So you don't have a habit that's big and complicated and long and takes a lot. You want to try to boil it down as best you can to be a 2-minute action. If you can make it a 2-minute action, it becomes way easier, way more likely that you'll follow through on it. And then finally, you want to make it satisfying. You want to make it, put a reason there. You want to give yourself some motivation to finish it by, something that makes you feel good, something that makes you happy, or something that gives you a reward. So for example, I mentioned that I took up meditating a few years ago. And one of the ways that I stick with it is it's gamified. So I use a little app called Muse. It has a little headset, goes across my forehead, reads my brain signals, gives me little sound cues to let me know that my mind is not quiet anymore. It's active. And then I can say, oh, I need to get back to that. But then it also has this little app. And so you can see, if you look real close, again, sorry if you're listening to this, that right here, there's how many days you've done it in a row and what your longest streak was. And you can see that in my case, the longest streak is 384 days. So it's a little bit over a year. And I've put in my current streak is about 117 days. And I still say I did that day that it didn't register. I still think it didn't. It just didn't log it in that I actually meditated that day. Anyway, you would be amazed at how much motivation comes from just wanting to get that streak a little bit longer. So when every day I do it, it's tremendously satisfying. And it's just this silly little thing that doesn't really necessarily mean anything, but your brain totally gets hooked on it. Anything you can do to bring you that kind of satisfaction will help you stick with that habit. So 4 things that you need to have a successful habit: make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. Financial success doesn't come from a brilliant strategy or getting better returns from your investments. It comes from having the right habits, from doing the right things for a long period of time. So as we go into this new year, don't make a New Year's resolution. Figure out what little thing you can change about yourself that will help take you a little bit at a time toward that goal, and see if you can't make a habit of it. And if you can, and if you can do it on a regular basis, that by the end of the year, I promise you will be excited about the results that you see. Happy New Year.